The city of glass burned in silence. Above the horizon, alien suns bled red over shattered towers. Amid the ruin walked a single human, Captain Ethan Vale, his armor scorched, his spirit flickering like a candle at the end of its wick. The war between humans and the Vaylari Dominion had lasted 7 long years. And now it was over. Humanity had won, but at a cost that victory could never justify. Ethan's boots crunched on crystalline dust as he passed through what once had been a royal courtyard. The air shimmered faintly with the residual hum of Vaylari energy, a haunting reminder of how beautiful and deadly their world had been. His orders were simple: secure the capital, find survivors, and await extraction. But beneath that simple directive was a silence that unnerved him. War had taken everything familiar, his friends, his home, and a part of himself he could no longer find. And then, from the ruins, he heard it. A sound so delicate, so out of place amid destruction, and a voice, "Stop." It was soft, melodic, trembling, not with fear but defiance. He turned sharply, raising his rifle. From behind a collapsed archway stepped a figure cloaked in silver, her skin faintly luminous in the dying light. Her eyes, large, violet, unblinking, carried both sorrow and unyielding fire. She was not just any Vaylari. The golden crest upon her temple marked her as Princess Arya of Lumineth, the last surviving heir to the Dominion throne. Ethan froze. Every soldier knew her face, Maga, the so-called Star Daughter, a symbol of their enemy's pride. But here she was, weaponless, exhausted, standing in the debris of her own fallen world. You're the reason this war started," he said, though his voice lacked venom. It sounded almost tired, the voice of a man who'd run out of hate. Arya stepped closer, hands raised slightly. "And you're the one who ended it," she whispered. Her accent curled through the air like soft wind chimes. "Do you feel victorious, human?" The question hit harder than any weapon. Victory? No, Ethan felt hollow. The silence between them stretched long, like the distance between 2 galaxies that should never have met. "I came to ensure no threats remain," he said finally. "Then shoot me," she replied calmly. "End the last of the Vaylari line. That would make your triumph complete, wouldn't it?" Ethan's finger hovered over the trigger, but he didn't pull. Something in her tone, not pride, not fear, something human, made him lower his weapon. Her eyes, though alien, mirrored the same grief he carried. "Enough people have died," he said softly. For the first time, the princess's composure wavered. Her gaze fell, and a single drop, clear as crystal, touched the ground. "You spared me?" "War's over," Ethan muttered, slinging his weapon to his back. "I'm not killing anyone else." She studied him silently, as if trying to understand a paradox that defied logic. Mercy from a human soldier who had every reason to hate her kind. In that fragile, unguarded moment, something unspoken passed between them, a thread of recognition. 2 survivors on opposite sides of history. He extended a gloved hand toward her. "Come with me. You'll die out here." Arya hesitated. The gesture was absurd. A conqueror offering his hand to the conquered. Yet behind his weariness was a sincerity that felt painfully real. She took his hand, and as her fingers met his, something shifted in both of them. Not peace, not forgiveness, but the faintest spark of understanding, fragile as dawn after endless night. For the first time since the war began, Ethan didn't feel like a soldier. He felt human again. The wind carried the scent of ash and rain as Ethan and Arya walked through the hollowed remains of the Vaylari capital. What had once been a city of light now lay cloaked in dust and shadow. The crystalline spires that had touched the stars were broken, jutting from the earth like the bones of some great fallen titan. Arya's silvery gown trailed across shattered glass, glimmering faintly with the faint bioluminescent threads woven through its fabric. She moved with quiet dignity despite exhaustion. Ethan watched her from the corner of his eye, uneasy. She was too calm, too composed for someone whose empire had just fallen. "You don't trust me," she said suddenly, her voice low but clear. He almost laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You noticed?" Her head tilted slightly, studying him. "I can hear it in your heartbeat," she murmured. "It changes when you lie." Ethan frowned. "Is that one of your tricks?" Her lips curved faintly. "Not a trick. Just how I perceive things. The Vaylari sense emotion the way humans sense temperature." Then, after a pause, she added softly, "Yours feels tired." He didn't answer. They reached the outskirts of the city. where the glassy ruins gave way to scorched plains. His armor's sensors flickered. Radiation levels were safe enough. Above, dark clouds churned like bruises in the sky. "Command's expecting me to report soon," he said. "They'll come for extraction. You'll be handed over." Arya's expression didn't change, though something in her eyes dimmed. "Handed over," she repeated. "To whom?" "High Council," Ethan replied. "They'll want to question you. Maybe even negotiate peace with what's left of your people." She gave a quiet, humorless laugh. "There are no people left to negotiate with." The silence after that was heavy. Ethan had seen entire colonies erased, yes, but hearing it from her lips made the loss feel larger, more unbearable. He looked at her again, not as an enemy, not even as royalty, but as a survivor standing on the edge of extinction. That night, they found shelter in the remains of a downed shuttle. The hull was cracked, but inside it was dry and warm. Arya sat by a dim emergency lamp, tracing her fingers over a broken console. Her touch made the faint Vailari script shimmer, fragments of language lost to war. Ethan leaned against the wall, watching her. "You could have run," he said quietly. "Why stay in the ruins?" She didn't look up. "Because I couldn't abandon them," she whispered. "My people believed I would lead them into a new era, and I failed." Her voice trembled on that last word, and for the first time her mask of calm fractured. Ethan saw something raw, human, grief too vast to contain. He wanted to say something, but words failed him. He knew that pain, the kind that left a hollow echo where faith used to be. Instead, he reached into his pack and handed her a canteen. "You can't rebuild anything if you die of dehydration." Her eyes flicked to him, uncertain. "Why help me?" "Because," Ethan said, "I've done enough destroying for one lifetime." They shared a quiet meal, tasteless rations that neither truly ate. But it wasn't the food that mattered. It was the silence between them, slowly shifting from hostile to something gentler. Outside, rain began to fall, washing away the dust of war. Through the cracked viewport, lightning illuminated the distant horizon, a soft reminder that storms end eventually. As the thunder faded, Arya whispered almost to herself, "Maybe." "Not all humans are monsters," Ethan looked at her. "And maybe not all Vailari are enemies." For the first time since they met, she smiled. Faint, fragile, but real. It was the smallest sign of hope in a galaxy drowning in ruin. And that night, under the shattered sky, the soldier and the princess, enemies by blood, bound by survival, began a journey neither of them could have imagined. Because sometimes, the war ends long before the healing begins. The morning dawned in hues of pale gold, filtering through the cracked hull of the shuttle. Ethan woke first, his hand instinctively brushing the sidearm by his belt. For a second he forgot where he was, then he saw her. Arya sat by the broken viewport, her silver hair illuminated by the faint light. She wasn't looking at him. Her gaze was fixed on the horizon, where the last remnants of her world shimmered faintly under a new sun. She looked so still that Ethan almost believed she wasn't real. Then she spoke softly. "Your kind sees the end of war as victory. Ours sees it as silence." Ethan rubbed the back of his neck. "Silence isn't always bad." Her violet eyes turned to him. "It is when your songs are gone." The simplicity of her words struck him deeper than any accusation could. There was no defiance there, no venom, only a hollow ache. And in that moment he realized she wasn't mourning a kingdom. She was mourning a culture, an entire way of life that had vanished. He stood stretching. "We have to move. This area isn't safe." Arya rose gracefully, her movements almost weightless. She followed him out into the dawn, the air crisp but heavy with unspoken words. The landscape ahead stretched endlessly. Scorched plains, veins of molten glass cutting across the ground like scars. They walked for hours. The silence was their uneasy truce. Then a faint metallic hum broke the stillness. Ethan's instincts kicked in. He pushed Arya behind a fallen beam. His visor scanned the horizon. A patrol drone. Human make, Ethan cursed under his breath. "Recon units. They'll scan for life forms," Arya frowned. "Can't you call them off?" "They're autonomous," he said grimly. "Anything non-human they'll target." "Then I shouldn't be here." Ethan looked at her, and for a heartbeat he saw the logic in her words. She'd slow him down. Put him at risk. but the thought of abandoning her twisted something inside him that he couldn't explain. "No," he said firmly. "We'll find another way." He guided her into a half-collapsed corridor beneath the remains of a transport tunnel. The drone's light swept across the rubble, mechanical and cold. Ethan held his breath, his hand over hers as they crouched in silence. Arya's pulse thrummed faintly under his glove. Steady, calm, even now. He didn't know if she was brave or simply resigned to fate. The drone passed. Its hum faded. Only then did he release her hand. "You saved me," she said quietly. "Again," he muttered. Her lips curved slightly. "That makes twice you've chosen mercy over duty." "Why?" Ethan hesitated. "Because maybe mercy is duty. Someone's got to start remembering what we're fighting for." She looked at him for a long moment, studying his face as though trying to read the blueprint of his heart. "Humans confuse me," she whispered. "You destroy, yet you protect. You hate, yet you feel. You fight like beasts, but you heal like poets." He chuckled softly. "Never been called that before." That small smile lingered between them as they pressed onward. Hours later, they found what looked like an abandoned outpost, half buried but intact. Ethan scanned the perimeter, then motioned her inside. It was dark, lined with alien consoles and faded banners. Arya walked slowly, fingertips brushing the dusty symbols on the walls. "This was one of our listening posts," she said softly. "We used it to observe human broadcasts." "Broadcasts?" "Yes," her voice softened, almost fond. "Your music? Your stories. My father said they were primitive, but I thought they were beautiful." Ethan watched her eyes glisten as she touched a broken screen. "So, you were listening to us even before the war," she nodded. "Trying to understand you, but we never truly did." There was a pause, long, delicate, and full of things neither dared to say. Ethan finally broke it. "Maybe it's not too late to start." Her gaze lifted to meet his, and this time there was no wall between them, just two souls stranded between destruction and the faint hope of something new. Outside, the wind whispered through the ruins, carrying away the echoes of two civilizations, one that had won the war, and another that might yet teach it what victory really means. By the third day, the wasteland began to blur into a monotone of grief. Endless gray plains, the echo of distant thunder, the whisper of wind moving through hollow towers. Ethan's armor was running low on power. Arya's faint bioluminescence had dimmed to a soft glow, like a dying ember trying to hold on through the cold. They had spoken little since they left the outpost. Silence wasn't their enemy now, it was protection. The air hummed with distant interference, static rippling across Ethan's comms. Someone, or something, was tracking them. When they stopped to rest near a shattered transport ridge, Ethan crouched low, checking his scanner. It blinked once, twice, then froze. "Someone's following us," he said quietly. Arya's eyes darkened. "Human?" He didn't answer right away. "Could be. Or maybe one of your people that survived." Her expression shifted. Hope, disbelief, then resignation. "If any of mine lived, they wouldn't welcome me." Ethan looked at her sharply. "Why?" she hesitated, then exhaled. "Because they think I started the war." He frowned. "But didn't your generals go—" "They acted under my seal," she interrupted softly. "The first attack orders bore my signature. The invasion was launched under my name." Ethan stared at her, trying to process the weight of that. "You mean, it wasn't you?" "No," her voice broke slightly. "It was my father's council. They wanted to strike before humans advanced further into the sector. I was a figurehead, too young to oppose them. But when I tried, they silenced me." The confession hung in the air like ash. Ethan had fought through blood and fire believing in a lie, that this princess had commanded death upon his people. And now she sat before him, trembling under the guilt of a crime she never chose. He swallowed hard. "You could have told me sooner, and you would have believed me?" Her tone wasn't sharp, just honest. Ethan had no answer. Before he could reply, the sky above cracked with the thunderous hum of engines. Dropships, sleek and angular, and tore through the clouds. Human insignia glowed faintly across their hulls. "Extraction teams," he murmured. "They found us," Arya stiffened. "You'll hand me over?" He hesitated. His orders were clear. Detain any surviving Vailari. Secure for questioning. But orders didn't fit the world he saw now. Not after 3 days beside her. Not after hearing her truth. The war had ended, but his conscience hadn't. He looked at her, truly looked, and saw not an enemy, but someone burdened by the same grief he carried. A mirror of his own humanity reflected in alien light. He stood abruptly. "Stay here. I'll handle them. Ethan, just trust me." He stepped out as the dropship descended. Wind kicked up debris around him, the storm of arrival almost deafening. A squad of armored soldiers approached, weapons drawn. "Captain Vale," one of them barked. "Command's been looking for you. Mission report?" Ethan kept his stance rigid. "Secured the sector. One survivor. Where?" He paused. Every instinct screamed at him. "Lie. Protect her." "In the ruins," he said evenly. No longer a threat, the soldier gestured. "We'll confirm." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Negative. Radiation pocket still unstable. I'll escort her myself once decon's cleared." The squad leader's visor flickered, suspicion in his voice. "You're covering for one of them, aren't you?" Before Ethan could answer, a voice echoed behind him. "She's here." It was Arya. She stepped into the open, unarmed, her head high. The setting sun caught her silver hair, turning her into something ethereal, fragile yet unbreakable. Ethan turned sharply. "What are you doing?" Arya's eyes softened. "You've carried enough guilt. Let me bear my own." The soldiers moved instantly, rifles raised. Ethan stood between them and her. "She's surrendering," he said through clenched teeth. No harm, but in their eyes she wasn't a surrendering figure. She was the last symbol of an enemy empire. Arya looked at him one last time, calm, almost peaceful. "Don't let this be your burden, Ethan Vale." And before he could stop her, she stepped forward, offering her hands in quiet submission. The war might have ended, but in that moment, Ethan realized the truth. The peace they'd fought for still demanded sacrifice, and this time it might be hers. The air inside the human command ship was sterile and cold, the kind of cold that seeps into bones and lingers behind the ribs. Ethan stood at attention, armor dusted with the ash of a world now labeled conquered territory. Across from him sat General Harker, a man carved from iron and protocol. "Captain Vale," Harker began, his tone clipped. "You're to be commended. Securing the Vailari capital was a decisive act. But your report raises questions." Ethan's hands tightened behind his back. "Sir, the survivor?" "The alien." Harker's voice dropped an octave. "You claim she surrendered willingly." "Yes, sir," Ethan replied. "Without resistance." Harker studied him with eyes as sharp as broken glass. "And you're aware of who she is?" Ethan nodded once. "Princess Arya of Lumineth." A flicker of interest crossed the general's face, the kind men wore when they smelled opportunity. "Then you understand what that means. Her trial will serve as closure for this war. Public morale demands justice. Justice." The word burned. Ethan's jaw clenched. "With respect, sir, she wasn't a combatant. The Dominion Council used her. She's not responsible." Harker's expression hardened. "Responsibility is irrelevant. Symbolism is not. Humanity needs to see the face of its enemy brought to account." Ethan's pulse thudded in his ears. He had seen what justice looked like in war. It wasn't about truth, it was about spectacle. About making grief feel like victory. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" Ethan said tightly. "Granted." "This isn't justice," he said, his voice trembling with restrained anger. "It's execution dressed as ceremony." Harker leaned forward slowly. "You've grown sentimental, Captain. Don't let proximity cloud your judgment." "Proximity?" Ethan snapped. "I watched her risk her life when she could have run. I saw what's left of her world. If this is the peace we fought for, then maybe we didn't win anything at all." For a long, heavy moment, the room was silent. Then Harker spoke, voice low and cold. "You forget yourself. You're a soldier, not a philosopher." "Dismissed." Ethan saluted stiffly and left, each step echoing like a countdown in his mind. They held Arya in a containment cell of transparent alloy, her glow dim behind the glass. When Ethan entered, she turned toward him with quiet calm, though her eyes betrayed fatigue. "They're going to put me on trial," she said softly. "Your people will watch. They'll cheer. It will make them feel the war meant something." Ethan stepped closer to the barrier. "I'm not letting that happen." Her lips curved faintly. "You can't stop them. I can try." She shook her head gently. "If you fight for me, you'll lose everything you've earned. Then so be it." Her expression softened. a mixture of sorrow and tenderness. "You're human," she whispered, "always rushing toward impossible causes." Ethan exhaled, his hand pressed against the glass. "Maybe that's what keeps us from turning into monsters." She mirrored the gesture, her slender fingers aligning with his through the barrier. The contact was illusionary, but it was enough. A fragile connection holding back the tide of despair. Outside, thunder rolled across the ship's hull. The universe seemed to hum in quiet disapproval. Arya looked at him, voice trembling now. "Ethan, I don't want to die hating your kind. I've seen enough hate to last lifetimes," he met her gaze. "And I don't want to live in a world where mercy is weakness." The lights dimmed suddenly, the shift change signal echoing faintly through the corridor. Ethan turned, a plan already forming in his mind. "If they want a trial," he said, "they'll get one. But not the one they expect," Arya frowned. "What are you going to do?" He gave a faint, almost reckless smile. Something very unsoldier-like. That night, the corridors of the command ship glowed in soft blue light. Guards stood posted, unaware that the man who had led them to victory was about to defy every order he'd ever sworn to obey. Ethan moved through the shadows like a ghost, his pulse steady, his purpose clear. Every door, every hallway brought him closer to her cell, closer to the moment where choice would weigh heavier than survival. He knew what he was risking, his rank, his freedom, his name. But as he whispered into the comm relay, overriding the security locks, he thought of the war, of the dead, of what humanity could be. The doors hissed open. Arya looked up, disbelief flickering in her violet eyes. "Ethan," she breathed, "you shouldn't be here." He extended his hand, the same hand he'd once offered amid ruins. "Come on," he said quietly. "Let's find out what peace really means." And for the first time since the war began, she smiled without sadness. The alarms came first, a low, rising howl that shook the ship like an awakening beast. Red lights flared along the corridors, painting metal walls in blood-colored pulses. Ethan moved fast, leading Arya through the narrow service passageways, every echo of their footsteps chased by the thunder of boots behind them. He knew this ship better than most, every blind spot, every maintenance hatch. But even so, the odds were impossible. A decorated human captain smuggling an alien princess out of military custody? It was madness. Treason. And yet, as he glanced back at Arya, cloak fluttering in the corridor wind, he knew he would do it again without hesitation. Her voice was steady, even as the klaxons screamed. "You planned this?" Ethan half smiled through the tension. "Let's just say I borrowed some authorization codes before my last debrief." "Borrowed?" She repeated, almost amused. "That's what you call treason?" "Semantics," he said, checking the next junction. "We'll make for the hangar. There's an old scout craft, barely functional, but it'll fly." Arya placed a hand on his shoulder as he paused at the corner. "You're risking your life for me. Why?" He looked at her, the lights flickering red across her silver hair. "Because if I walk away now, I become everything I fought against." Their eyes met, two worlds colliding in a moment that felt like eternity. Then the shout came, "Captain Vale." "Stand down!" Ethan cursed under his breath, pulling her into the next hallway. Pulse rounds hissed past them, scorching the walls. He fired back, not to kill, but to deter. "Go," he barked. Arya moved with surprising agility, the remnants of her royal training showing through grace under fire. As they reached the hangar's outer bay, the airlock doors loomed ahead like a promise. But between them and escape stood a dozen armed soldiers, and at their front, General Harker himself. Ethan froze, weapon still raised. "Move aside, sir." Harker's face was unreadable, but his voice dripped with controlled fury. "You've lost your mind, Captain. Hand her over." Arya stepped forward, her hands raised in calm surrender. "He's not your enemy," she said softly. "I am." "Quiet," Harker snapped. "Your kind's lies end today." Ethan's heart pounded. "She's innocent." "Innocent?" Harker barked. "Tell that to the colonies burned under her crest. Tell it to the billions who'll never come home." Ethan's voice broke. "And who decided their deaths meant peace? You? Me? We killed just as many, maybe more." The general's expression hardened. "Stand down, Captain." "That's an order." Ethan's weapon wavered. His entire life, every oath, every command, every uniform he'd worn, balanced on the edge of that moment. Then Arya spoke again, her tone soft yet resonant. Ethan Vale, do not lose your soul for me. He turned to her, anguish in his eyes. If I do nothing, then I never had one. Before Harker could react, Ethan slammed the emergency lever. The hangar lights flared, gravity flickered, and the bay doors roared open to the void. Soldiers stumbled as the pressure shift threw them off balance. Now, Ethan shouted. He grabbed Arya's hand, pulling her toward the scout craft tethered to the far wall. They leapt aboard as the vessel groaned to life. Alarms screamed, docking clamps disengaged, and with a violent lurch the ship tore free from the carrier's hold. Outside, the stars exploded into motion, streaks of silver against endless dark. Ethan wrestled the controls, pushing the engines to their limit as the comm crackled. Captain Vale, Harker's voice boomed through the static. You are hereby declared an enemy of the human coalition. Surrender immediately. Ethan glanced at Arya, who stood beside him, steady despite the chaos. You hear that? He said with a faint, tired grin. We're officially on the same side now. Arya gave a small, luminous smile. Then let's see what side the stars take. The scout ship vanished into hyperspace, a streak of defiance against the void. Hours later, they drifted in silence, the engines cooling in the soft hum of afterburn. Outside the viewport, the galaxy stretched in magnificent stillness, billions of lights unbothered by the wars of smaller beings. Ethan leaned back, exhausted. No turning back now. Arya's gaze remained fixed on the stars. Do you regret it? He thought for a moment, then shook his head. No, I've spent too long fighting for flags and names. This time, I fought for something real. And what is that? She asked gently. He looked at her, truly looked, and said, a chance to be better than what we were. She didn't answer. She only reached out, her fingers brushing his hand. The silence that followed wasn't empty one, it was full. Full of meaning, of pain, of fragile hope. For the first time since the war began, both soldier and princess felt something neither had known in years: freedom. But in the dark between stars, freedom always carried a cost, and neither of them yet knew how high that cost would be. The stars outside the viewport shimmered like frozen tears, beautiful, distant, unreachable. The scout ship drifted through the quiet dark, its engines cooling, power cells nearly spent. Inside, the hum of life support was soft, rhythmic, the heartbeat of two fugitives lost between worlds. Ethan sat in the pilot's seat, eyes heavy but alert. Arya stood beside him, her silver hair glowing faintly in the dim cabin light. Neither had spoken for hours. They didn't need to. The silence between them said everything, about the war, the choices, the scars that would never fade. Finally, Arya broke the quiet. They'll hunt you, she said softly. You defied your own kind, he gave a faint, tired smile. They'll hunt us, her lips curved sadly. No, you can still go back, Ethan, tell them I forced you. Say I used some alien trick on your mind. He turned to her, eyes steady. I won't lie to save myself. I've already lived enough lies. Her gaze fell to the floor. Then you'll lose everything. Not everything, he murmured. You're still here. She looked up sharply, caught off guard by the tenderness in his tone. For a moment she saw not the soldier who'd once pointed a weapon at her, but the man who had reached across the unbridgeable and offered his hand. Why are you like this? She asked softly, almost to herself. So stubborn, so human. He chuckled faintly. That's the best and worst thing about us. We don't stop hoping, even when we should. The ship's console flickered suddenly, breaking the stillness. A signal, faint but growing stronger. A human transmission. They'd been found. Ethan's stomach sank. They're tracking our signature. We've got maybe 15 minutes. Arya's expression remained calm, though her eyes glistened. You can still survive this. Let them take me. They won't kill you for trying. He stood abruptly, anger and fear tangled in his voice. No, don't ask me to undo what we've done. Don't make this meaningless. Her voice trembled, but her words were steady. It's not meaningless. Ethan, you showed me something I thought didn't exist anymore. Compassion. Forgiveness. You reminded me what my people lost before the first shot was ever fired. She stepped closer, her presence soft, radiant, the warmth of starlight meeting the shadow of a man who had forgotten what light felt like. I can't let you die because of me, she whispered. He met her eyes, voice low and raw. Then don't stay alive with me. The console flared again, a final warning. Multiple ships closing in. There was no escape. Arya placed a hand on his chest. If I stay, they'll destroy you. And then everything you did will become another reason for them to hate. Let me end it differently. Arya. His voice cracked, her smile was soft, almost serene. You won the war, Ethan. But the real victory was remembering what it means to be human. Don't lose that now. Before he could stop her, she moved to the navigation terminal, entering coordinates manually. The ship's course shifted toward the upper atmosphere of a nearby gas giant, a storm world with magnetic interference strong enough to erase any trace of them. Ethan's eyes widened. No, you'll burn up. Only if I go alone, she said gently. If you stay, they'll catch you. But if they think I took the ship, they'll stop hunting you. He grabbed her arm, desperate. Please, don't do this. Arya reached up, touching his cheek, her hand cool, luminous, trembling. You once said mercy is duty. Let me return it. Her eyes, those violet, endless eyes, met his one last time. You gave me back my soul. Now I'll protect yours. And before he could react, she pressed a sequence on the console. A shockwave of light filled the cabin, a teleport discharge. He stumbled backward as the world dissolved in white. When the light faded, Ethan was standing on the barren surface of a nearby moon, the wrecked emergency pod behind him. Above, in the distant sky, a streak of fire burned bright, the scout ship descending into the storm. Arya. He shouted into the void, voice breaking. The sound vanished into the cold air, swallowed by silence. He fell to his knees, watching as the streak of light disappeared into the swirling clouds below. And then, for just a moment, the clouds parted. A single beam of violet light broke through the storm, faint but unmistakable. It shimmered like a farewell. Ethan pressed his hand to his heart, tears cutting through the grime on his face. You didn't just change my life, he whispered. You changed what life means. Weeks later, when the coalition found him, he said nothing of what truly happened. They called him a survivor, a hero, the man who won the war. But he never corrected them, because deep down, Ethan Vale knew the truth. The real victory wasn't his escape or his medal, or the end of a war. It was a single act of compassion between two souls who were never meant to understand each other, and did anyway. And somewhere, beyond the edge of human reach where light meets eternity, the stars burned a little brighter, as if remembering her name, Arya.